Alrighty, we'll get the September agenda briefing session opened, and I welcome all councillors and staff. The agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item on the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and the community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders and emerging elders, both past and present. Record of apologies and leave of absence. We have Councillor Capagrego, who is still on leave. All other councillors are present. 3, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. We've received one from Councillor Coleman in regards to item 7.1.1. Are there any others, councillors and staff?
I just have an impartiality interest with regards to the item, the Myla Pines proposal. I live close to the development.
Thank you. Are there any others? No. Deputations is nil, so we'll move into the officers' reports. 5.1.1, which is the Ridley Place Cafe and Public Facilities Update. Do we have any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Hitchcock.
So I wasn't on council when this was approved, so what I'm going to ask may have been discussed back then. So from reading the documentation, what I can gather is that worst case scenario, the Shire will be up for almost $1 million to get this cafe up and running. So with a view to the longer term and making some of those costs back, does the Shire have any projected income that we'll get from this cafe?
Acting CEO.
Sorry. Through the chair, I will ask Mr Putland to provide some information on that. He's the one who's working on this project at the moment and is attending to answer any questions.
Okay, through the chair, no we don't. There's not any firm, I suppose, plans of what to put there. So at the moment we're looking at a commercial, an area leased to allow a commercial lease to occur. There is a master plan. It does show a concept to building, what could be there, but they will need to come back to council once we work out exactly what could be there. At the moment also the plan is to try and get a lessee who will build and operate the site. So the construction costs would be borne by that lessee. The site works costs that you did see in the business case are based on a retaining wall with 3 metres of fill. There is another option that's been discussed with the building officers and special projects officers, and that's to build the ground to a lower level and put the building on stilts or stumps and raise it. Maybe aesthetically more pleasing, have a lesser impact, and it's substantially lower the costs. But we can go back once the lease is gone through and cost that properly, come back with some detailed costs. And that was what the extra $30,000 was for, to develop those costs and plans properly.
Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Madam President. thank you. You've just answered one of my questions, because the WA Planning Commission recently retired chair suggested that that area will be subject to an increased water levels, and recommended that no further normal building be along the foreshore. So one question is the stumps, and I'm pleased actually to hear that. The other thing that concerns me though is at our Forward Capital Works workshop, we agreed with the CEO and largely the senior staff, and most councillors also said that we have so many projects on our books for the next 5 years, give or take, that we were not going to entertain any further projects because of capacity. And we've already heard from the acting CEO that we don't have capacity. So my concern is not about the project. My concern's hugely about the timing. And I suggest that we don't have that capacity for perhaps another 2 or 3 years. So to spend any money at the moment seems to me to be unwise, and I just ask for staff clarification on that.
So in regards to the timing, and that's what a question I had as well. So maybe we can get, have you got a bit of a timeline, Mr. Putland, that you can provide us with?
A timeline for the lease. So at the moment, the state government have said that the DPLH has said that they will prepare a lease for the site. One of the things we can discuss with them is the duration of that lease. At the current talk was 20 years, but I've also seen a document where it said 20 years times 4, which would give an 80-year term. It does allow the use of the land for a commercial lease. What form that takes, or what does go into that area is for a future decision. My advice at the moment is, while you can get a lease, get a lease. Get the maximum term lease you possibly can at a peppercorn rent, because you may not get it in the future, because every time they go back and review the sea level rise, the estimations are above. At the moment, the floor level is 3 metres above sea level. So it's not going to be flooded, certainly in the life of anyone on this council and probably their children or grandchildren, but it's becoming more and more difficult to get commercial leases of land in those sort of areas, and I'm unaware of any other in the Bunbury area that would be similar in nature. This was started in 2020, so it's been a long term, the discussions about this lease. It's not a new project, it's actually continuing one that's been on the books for quite some time.
But I think your question, though, Councillor Coleman, is around the capacity of staff to deliver and manage this project. So prior to the lease,
I'm the only one working on it at the moment. We have talked to the economic development team about going out and talking to the local businesses about whether they'd be interested or what they could do. That's as much to talk to Benez, the Adrift Brewery, the Treendale Tavern, some of the other operators that could potentially could compete with, but also that might also be interested in going in there to see whether or not there is any interest, and then come back to council with an indication of where the commercial businesses might see this sitting.
Acting CEO, staffing-wise, you're happy with this to proceed? I think that's the guts of the question, basically, yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair, we do have an extra resource working on this in Mr. Putland, and realistically, we're not going to see this project go ahead in the next 2 years. Because it's going to take that amount of time to negotiate the lease, to get everything in place. What we're doing at the moment is baseline foundation work, so that when we get to a point where we can go ahead, we're ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Crispin.
Just in regards to the business case, it confirms that had $240,000 allocated in 24, 25. Did we carry that forwards or did we reallocate it to something else?
Acting CEO?
Thank you, Madam President. No, it was reallocated to something else. It was not carried forward.
Councillor Bromham?
Yeah, thanks very much. I had a couple of questions on this particular item. First of all, I just want to say this was a community-driven project initially, well back in the early 2003, 2004, when I was on council, so it's been on the books for a long, long time. Secondly, there was some other stuff put in which was to do with the shopping centre and the Ridley Place development in relation to the road to the south becoming just to take the dual carriageway out and just have single through there, which I didn't see on the plan. Thirdly, the plan isn't to scale, which gives you the wrong impression. It's got food van areas where the green area is, where people are asking for that to stay. So that's a concern to me. And I'm just wondering, given the rising tide, the cost of the project, the complication of the time it's taken, whether this project is actually worth continuing with. So I'd like to get
what's
a feeling.
your question, Councillor Bromham?
Well, I want to get a feeling from council what they feel about that, from other councillors. That's my question.
Well, I'm not going to put it to other councillors because it's a report here with
Right.
the recommendations, but do you have any other questions? You made a couple of comments there, but are there any questions?
Yeah, okay. So why isn't the plan drawn to scale so we can actually understand the room in relation to the green space?
Mr Putland?
Yeah, through the chair, the master plan is a concept drawing. You will find in the attachments, there's a subdivision plan which is to scale and does show the actual site, the size of the lot. But the master plan was a concept plan that was developed, in 2022, 3, I think, and it was meant to give an artist's impression of what could be on the site, only it wasn't a scale drawing.
Thank you.
Councillor Caboni?
Yeah, I guess my question is, can we put another dot point in here, if you like, or another number that reaffirms our support for the construction of this project? Because I can see where Councillor Bromham and Councillor Coleman are coming from. This is the time now that we decide whether you spend money and proceed with this project or not, because the next thing that will come to council is money for the forward capital works to put the services to the site. So I think Councillor Coleman's right, now's the time you decide it. So my question is, can we put a dot point in there, given there's going to be a change of council coming up shortly, that reaffirms support to proceed with this project, and then we can have the debate next week whether you want to do that or not.
Acting CEO?
Through the chair, thank you. That is a decision that would be considered a significant decision and couldn't be made during caretaker period. So the report before you is asking for a relatively insignificant amount of money to progress a decision that council has already made. If council was to change that decision completely, it would be considered a significant decision and therefore not valid during caretaker.
So we could defer, couldn't we? We could defer this.
Yes.
That's an option next week. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Coleman, then Councillor Crispin.
Thank you. So given that it's almost $1 million just to get the works done, to make it ready for a leased area, where do we expect that money to come from? Is that likely to come out of our funding, or is it totally dependent on grant funding? If it's going to come out of our funds, are we looking at rate increases for our ratepayers?
Mr Putland?
Through the chair, yeah, look, there's actually funding coming forward that can be used for the planning earthworks and funding through the Commonwealth funding. If we'd been ready now, we could have applied for it. Now can't remember what the name of the funding is, but it's up to 5 million, and it did allow for different stages with planning and then building. We did have a look at it. It's too early even to consider planning now, and as the acting CEO said, in any case, making that decision now wouldn't be a valid decision because you're in the caretaker period.
Follow up? Yep.
So just to follow up on that, is it viable that this decision, if we progress it today, is it viable that any further funding is contingent on 100% grant funding?
That could be a condition.
It could be a condition that's certainly up to council. Whether it's realistic that it would be 100% funded, I suspect that would be slightly unrealistic. Most funding bodies want a contribution from the applicant towards it, but this funding that Mr. Putlam was talking about is certainly something that we had earmarked very clearly for this particular project, but as he said, we're just not quite ready for it now, and so we're hoping that potentially we could apply for it next year if this decision goes through.
So this $40,000, if we allocate that and you go ahead with the survey and the like, that goes towards that grant application?
Through the chair, no.
Oh, okay.
The $30,000 is to look at that $900,000 in the business case and say, can we cut that right back by looking how much will it actually cost us to get the services down there? Talking with the Director of Infrastructure, Acting Director of Infrastructure, there needs to be some sewer down to the toilet blocks that needs to be connected to this because it's causing problems now. We want to look at the cost of getting the sewer down, the services down to that lease area, so that the council knows what the cost of getting the services down there, and then look at the proper cost of doing some earthworks if it was on stilts, if we could lower that cost right down to give you a far better understanding of what the site works would be.
Councillor Coleman?
Yeah, just to clarify, if we, with most grant funding, I do totally appreciate that we have to make a contribution. So is it highly likely that out of 910,000, or let's say 900,000, we're up for almost $500,000 of our ratepayers' funds to go towards it? I mean, what's the grant funding that we were alluding to? What is the normal percentage for input from our own funding to go towards that?
Thank you for the question. It does vary from funding round to funding round and from funding body to funding body. I would suggest that 50% is probably more than what we would be expected to contribute. This particular funding that we're talking about is specifically for planning of infrastructure for large projects. So it's my understanding that we would not be required to provide half. The other thing that Mr. Putlam was saying is that this 40,000 that he's asking for in this particular report is to evaluate all of those costs based on the fact that $900,000 was based on a retaining wall and fill, which is extraordinarily expensive way to do things. And the fact that we're talking about putting it on stumps is something that we would expect to substantially reduce the costs involved. So that's what we don't know yet, and that's why we're coming to council for some funding to be able to re-look at the project and make sure that when we do go out for funding applications, if we're going to, that we have all the information we need to support that properly.
Thank you. I'll just go to Mr. Winter. Did you have something? Then I'll go to you, Councillor Crispin.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to further answer the question in relation to rates, Council, when it looked at the forward capital works plan, included $500,000 in next year's allocation coming from rates for the site works, and also included $250,000 for the roadworks that needed to be done at that intersection, again, coming from rates. Both of those were factored into the long-term financial plan, so have already been included in our long-term planning, coming from rates, just by way of information.
Thank you, Mr Winter. For next. Okay, councillor Crispin.
Just two questions. I know the first one's not going to be something to be answered, but it could be a rough estimate. When it comes to leasing the actual land, are we talking peppercorn meaning $1 a year, or are we talking actual commercial rates?
Through the chair, we don't know from the DPLH. That's something that I'm hoping that the Shire will get that land for a peppercorn, and it will give the Shire the ability to sublease that land on a commercial basis. But until we actually get a draft document from DPLH, we won't know that. The draft lease will be developed by the State Solicitor's Office for DPLH.
With that, so we don't own the land, and so do we need to have all this done prior to them giving us basically the lease for us to then sublease?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, we do. They've set out their schedule of works, if you like, for the Shire. They prepared the survey instructions. The surveyors surveyed the site. Those documents have now actually been sent to DPLH. They're saying that it'll take them between 3 and 4 months now to prepare a draft lease, from which point we start to negotiate, as the Shire does with its community groups. We will see if we can get the best deal we possibly can for the Shire and bring it back to council. If council feel that it's a good deal, then council have the decision to accept it, or if they don't think it's a good deal, not to.
Just reason to the question mainly is, so if we do the site works and we then rent it out to a private sector, are we then going to get a peppercorn rate that we're renting out to that private sector, or is there a way of finding out what where it is we're renting it off from? We can get that figure prior to then us getting to that next stage.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, 2 stages. Once we won't do any site works until we get the lease sorted. We can't do any works on the site until we have that lease agreed and signed off. But in the meantime, what we're suggesting is the economic development team goes out to talk to some of the commercial operators in Austral End and in Treendale, the area, and potentially broader, to find out what they would expect to pay for something like that, what they would need there, what they would like to see there, what they think would be a successful business there. But also then to look at what income could the Shire expect from that business through a commercial lease.
2 things with that. So if we then lease the land out, I'm just confused why we're using ratepayer money to to get the site servicing done for a private, obviously, cafe restaurant. Whereas if this is commercially viable, normally the private sector would take on that responsibility of doing the site work. So if I purchase some land, I'd then do the site works and I'd build the building. I just don't see that.
It's going to be public toilets.
Yeah, through the chair, there is a component of it that will, the public toilets need to be incorporated into the building. The lease area does cover most of where the public toilets are. And one of the, I believe, one of the elements of this was to improve the public toilets in that area through this development.
I don't know if it's possible, but is it possible to speak to private sector at the moment? And I can't recall what the word is, but there is a lease agreement, which is not a lease agreement, it's a pre-proposed lease, something like that, where if you do find someone in the private sector and says, yes, we're willing to obviously take that approach, then we use the ratepayers' money to then fund the consulting fees to get the idea of what we want there based on what the concept plan is. I just feel like we're shooting forward before we have to come backwards. So.
Is that the question? Or?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, so is it possible to talk to the private sector without spending money at the moment? Sorry.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Yes, we could. One of the things we wanted to look at was was whether it goes ahead or not, was to find out what it's going to cost to get that services down to that area. So whatever the form that it might take, and the form might be, it's not leased out as commercial. What it costs to get the service, that was the money that's been requested, by the way, is what was already in the budget last year and the year before. It just wasn't used. It's been sitting there, and it was taken out of the budget inadvertently through this budget, from last budget. What didn't appear in this budget. We will do our best to find out from the commercial sector if there's an operator that would be willing to do those site works, absolutely, before the Shire spends any money. Whether or not we could get someone to say they'll also cost or put the site works in and even design those site works, we can also explore before we spend any of that money. The money that's been spent at the moment is only for a survey to get the lease area, get the lease agreed with the state government.
Last question. Concerning the state government, then talking about site works to get services available, which falls under state, which they would probably be aware of what the costs are going to be, firstly. My question is where are we going to pull this 40 grand from out of the budget, the fact that we didn't allow it to be allocated in this year as an oversight?
Mr Winter.
We'd be looking at dealing with that at the budget review. Currently, we do have some additional financial assistance grants that have now been committed from the state. So that's one area, but until we come with the full package of the budget review, we won't actually be able to identify it. But straight up, that's where we would be looking initially to grab those funds.
I won't ask the last one, sorry.
Councillor Colwyn.
Yes, if I remember, thank you for that. If I remember rightly, we took it out of the budget because we have so many projects, and at the Forward Capital Works, if I remember rightly, we agreed that we weren't going to progress anything new pending, because we've been so successful in getting all of the fabulous grants that we have for this next 12 months. So my question is, what is the validity of getting costings now for site works that for a project that may not go ahead for another 2 years, and we know that the costs rise every 6 months anyway. So I'm just wondering if it's one thing to know what we need to do, it's a completely different thing to know what the costings are. And I don't think I just wonder how valid that will be in spending that money up front rather than waiting till we're in a position to allocate staff to really follow this through. Because it's one thing to say that we have a very, very experienced person doing this at the moment, like yourself, doing all of this. But it takes an awful lot of work, as we've heard from the CEO. The leasing alone takes a lot of work. Managing these projects, we've learnt that through all of the big projects we've had, tennis clubs, etc. How valid is this money going to be if we're not going to progress the project in a very short space of time?
The last bit there was the question. Mr Putland, do you?
Costings probably won't be valid, but the design will be. There is currently no design. How do you connect into the sewer from the existing toilets or from that site up onto the nearest sewer main? It's going to cost some money to get someone to go through and work out that alignment to get power to the site. Should be easy because the toilets are there, but is there enough power to do something with the site? So doing that design works, you can always go back and just update your costs, but getting the design works is a key thing here to understand how it can be connected and where it can be connected, and the rest is it can be updated on an annual basis.
Okay, yeah, good. Councillor Dickinson, did you have a question? Sorry.
So just to clarify, this is only one step of the process and it's the beginning, and it's not saying that we're going to proceed and build this facility, but it will now enable us to get the paperwork in place to apply for future grant funding and to put it out for expressions of interest. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just a quick one. So you mentioned as part of your explanation before that we have some developing issues with the toilets that are already there. Will this design process, if it's approved, will that assist us in rectifying those toilets even if we don't proceed with this project?
Through the chair, so at the moment we have difficulties with the leach drains and the septic system that's there. So I would suggest that in the near future we are going to need to look at the sewer if nothing else was to progress. One of the issues that we do have though is it's an opportunity now to get the sewer size right, that if this progresses, but if we just do it for the toilets, it'll be a very different design than what we will have for a building, because what they're looking for is the amount of water coming out of the building. So that'll be significantly different if you have a restaurant working there. So I guess what Mr. Putland's trying to do is to look at what that potentially can be so we can plan for that in the future. And if we do have to upgrade to service the toilets to make them work properly, upgrade it to a point where it's ready to go for future development if we need it, rather than doing the project twice.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, thank you, Mr. Putland. Item 5.1.2, which is the minutes from the Southwest Country Zone meeting for noting. Any questions, councillors? 5.1.3, the Audit Committee meeting for October 2025. Due to the elections, we are looking at rescheduling the Audit Committee meeting to November 2025. Any questions, councillors? Yep, Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, with the auditor's report that needs to be done, we then has to have the annual report within 1 month as well. Then that flows on to the electors meeting and so on. So will pushing this back rather than bringing it perhaps a week forward or so, will that make an imposition a knock-on effect on a whole range of other things?
Oh, sorry.
Well, they're all fighting up the end here. Who wants to respond to that? So
I can speak in relation to the annual report. So it likely, very likely won't go to the November meeting. We generally hold more or less a special audit committee meeting to receive the report. So this will be our ordinary quarterly audit committee that we usually have, and then generally depending on when we get the report back, we then set another audit committee. So normally there's 5 in a year, not 4, but we never quite know when the auditors are going to be finished.
Thank you. So we'll still be compliant without putting undue pressure on staff, particularly?
Through the chair, there's always a bit of pressure at, at audit time, but yeah, it's as it is normally. Yeah.
Mr. Winner, did you want to add anything to that? All done? Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you. Infrastructure services is nil. Sustainable development 5.3.1 is noting the petition that we received from the Mylup Primary Industries Reserve. Any questions around this one, councillors? Councillor Coleman?
Yeah, I'd just like to understand, particularly for people watching online as well, very overview, do we have any opportunity here to make a direct influence on the decision, or could you explain to us and all of the viewers where this initial decision, where this ultimate decision comes from? Because my understanding is that as councillors, irrespective of how passionate we might be about or not about the issue, we have very little direct influence. So is that correct? And could you explain it to us, please, very briefly?
Mr. Hughes?
So through the chair, thank you for your question. The influence would be through advocating on behalf of ratepayers and property owners beside the proposed development and further afield. It is a state government process. It is in the very early stages to conduct a viability assessment. So we're talking years, potentially decades into the future for this process. So that will be further into the future if it does go through the WA planning framework. As like most applications of that magnitude, it will be put to the council through a officer's report, and through that it can be debated and discussed. At the end of the day, the council will either have two choices: to recommend the officer's report or not recommend it. That information is then transferred onto the state government at the time. That may be a different planning landscape at that stage, a decade or so into the future. But that would be the council's involvement at that stage.
And this petition, Mr Hughes, would be part of that officer's report? Would that be included into the officer's report?
Can be, yes.
Any other questions, councillors? No, thank you. Corporate services, we'll move into 5.4.1. Payments for August 2025. Do we have any questions, councillors? I know Councillor Dickinson has sent a couple through. They'll be addressed.
Yes, I was just wondering, it did say in the payments, for the August attendance fees, the sum per councillors was $1,739.75 for ordinary councillors, but in September it was $1,690.50. So I was just wondering why there was a difference in the amounts, please.
Mr Winter?
Thank you, Madam President. Often the refunds or payments to councillors will include other reimbursements like travelling, and so that brings a different amount month by month.
In the figures that I have quoted, though, I looked at all the ordinary councillors and they all got paid those amounts, so there was no differentiation for travel. So that was why I asked the question.
All right, we might take that one on notice.
I'll
Mr.
take that one
Winter.
on notice, thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Coleman?
Thank you. There's a number of items in there. One example is EFT 78877, Shire staff accommodation after community meetings, and there's quite a number of those. Could we just find out why that is, please? What was that for? I mean, obviously it's for accommodation. Why after the community meetings?
Acting CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As council is aware, that there are several staff who live quite a way away from here in the Shire of Harvey, and as a work health and safety issue, we deemed it, and because we didn't know how long each of those meetings was going to go for, it was determined that where possible we'd actually provide accommodation for the senior staff who were attending those meetings to avoid a long drive, potentially late at night.
I'll go to Councillor Crispin and then to Councillor Coleman.
Sorry, just to, I guess, more of a question thing around that. Assuming those staff members were working the entire day plus then doing the community outreach, which put them past the threshold.
Yes,
safe,
absolutely.
yeah,
That is correct.
Yeah.
So most staff were starting between 7:30 and 8 in the morning and working through, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Coleman?
Thank you. An example of one is EFT 78912, and they were trophies for, or medallions for, the netball competitions at the HRCC. So I'm just curious, do we pay for prizes for all of our sporting organisations in the Shire?
I'm not sure for all, but Acting CEO?
I would have to take that on notice. It is potentially the prizes for Shire run competition, but I will take that on notice and get some more details. Thank you, Trish.
Any other questions, councillors? Yep, Councillor Coleman, I knew there'd be one more.
Sorry, yeah, EFT 79044, is a big red waste bin for $89,000. Perhaps we could may I have an update on why we have a big red waste bin at nearly almost $90,000, please?
Anyone in a position? We'll take that one on notice and we'll get back to you. Yep. Thank you, councillor Coleman. We'll move on to item 5.4.2, which is the financial statements as at the 31st. Sorry, councillor Holly?
I was just finalising what I was going to ask, if I may.
Yes? Is your microphone on, councillor Holly?
Because I haven't started talking. It was for the seat belts on the bus. Sorry, wrong line. I was trying to work out why it cost 300,000, but it's not.
Okay. No. We'll move on to item 5.4.2, financial statements as at the 31st of August 2025. Yep, councillor Crispin.
Just a very random one. The 2.4 million, which was given to us in the last quarter of 2024, 2025, does that reflect in last financial year's budget, or did it get put forward to the 25-26 budget?
The prepayment of the financial assistance grants reflects in this year's budget. So it's been brought to account.
Just curiosity for accounting purposes, like a question of it. Does it affect it that it did go in on the last quarter of 2024, 2025? Does that affect in any way when it comes to, obviously, runnings?
Not really, no. When we receive those funds, we allocate them to a reserve and maintain them specifically for the purpose of coming into this budget period.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Community and lifestyle is nil. Notice of motions for the following meeting. Councillor Crispin, I think, has sent through two, which we will follow up, councillor Crispin, on those and have a look. And the next one? Yep. Alrighty.
If I may, if I could just contact Councillor Christian, because we actually have started a bus route program for tree pruning this year. So we've gone through and identified the worst areas, and we've had extra money allocated. So more than happy to probably catch up with you and have a chat about that, and it may answer some of these questions for you.
So if that was the case, we could remove that one.
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
Just so I can send it to the guys actually out there.
Yeah. So I'm more than happy to look at the roads we're currently doing. So we've got about $150,000 worth of works on bus routes being undertaken at the moment.
Yep.
So that may answer that question for you if you're happy to catch up.
That'd be awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Shah. Councillor Coleman, did you have a question? Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So just a question on the second motion. If we do, if there was any appetite at all to do a differential rate on vacant land, how do people stand if they have land that the state government will not allow them to subdivide, but they can no longer use as agricultural land, so therefore it's vacant land as such? So are they potentially going to be pinged a vacant land differential rate that's due to something beyond their control?
Mr. Winter, are you in a position to?
I'll make a bit of an assumption that typically when you're looking at land like that, it's unimproved value properties, And if we were looking at a differential general rate on vacant land, it would normally be on GRV, gross rental value properties.
Okay, any other questions? Right, we do have an item behind closed doors. Before we go there, are there any questions in relation to this particular item? If so, we will go behind closed doors. No, everyone's happy? All righty. That's it. That's all we have. So thank you very much. I'll declare this.
Did you want to talk about after we close off?
I declare this agenda briefing session closed.